Welcome, everyone. We are here for another very special podcast. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by ClubGG, where you can create poker clubs for free, play with your friends, and win hundreds of thousands of dollars in prizes monthly. With that said, we're going to dive in. I have a friend of mine, great guy, and a world-class tennis player join us, Vasek Pospisil. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here, all the way down from Australia, Melbourne.
I love it.
But we made it happen.
We did make it happen. A little bit of coordinating time. Beautiful city, beautiful place, and of course, you get to play in one of the marquee events in the world. So, yeah, tell me kind of what's happening there right now. Are you at the early stages, in between, and how's it going there?
Yeah, just getting ready actually. So I flew down here about 10 days ago. Just been training, getting ready, played a warm-up event beforehand, and then first round is coming up in 4 days. So I find out tonight who I play against and have 3 days to get ready for any specifics for that opponent. But yeah, it's a full draw. It's a tough draw. Obviously, all the top players in the world are here. So depending on the luck of the draw, I can play world number 1 or world number 100. So I'll find that out tonight. And in the meantime, just prepare, train, try to relax a little bit. But it's definitely more work than play at this point.
Well, yeah, it's an amazing city. That's definitely, I think, one of my favorite cities in the world. So I'm sure that's fun to be there, but also to be focused and dialed in training is, there's a lot of temptation, a lot of cool stuff to do and be out. How speaking of number 1, I see you were just playing, I believe, with Djokovic. Was that in an event? Is that a charity thing? Was that a tournament doubles, or what is this that you guys were doing there together?
Yeah, we played doubles in Adelaide, so it was a warm-up event where it was funny. He usually doesn't play doubles. I think he played his last doubles match like a year ago, but we're good friends, and we were chatting before coming down to Australia whether how much we would train together and just get ready a little bit. And then he's like, okay, I'm playing Adelaide. And I was like, oh, let's just play doubles. And he's like, okay, let's do it. I was talking to his coach. His coach is like, I don't know why he wants to play doubles. He's like, I don't know. He'll just do whatever he wants. If he wants to play, he'll play. So it was pretty funny. And so we had, it was a blast. I mean, like I said, he's a great friend on tour. And so we just kind of got out there and I guess it was more of a warm up for him. But it was obviously super fun.
Very, very cool. And explain to me, because this is something I've been to some tennis high level stuff, and in Miami, obviously there's some cool events, and then been to Wimbledon, which was pretty surreal, just the whole experience. And you've actually won the doubles at Wimbledon, which is pretty insane, one of the majors, and you got that done, and you played singles as well. I think you've been ranked as high as number 4 in doubles and top 25, if I'm not mistaken, in singles. Maybe I'm the notes I have, just pretty incredible. And that's not so common, is it, that people do doubles and singles? I mean, that's got to be, could you maybe touch on a bit of how that works in tennis and what the general norm is on that?
Yeah, it's definitely not common. I would say, singles is obviously is more prestigious and so, generally if you're doing well in singles, you're using, you don't want to expend any extra energy on the court or even in training or anything on doubles if that's your focus, your priority. So I think, and that goes the same. I mean, same for a doubles player, right? So, and they are a little bit different. I mean, it's a sport of tennis, but singles and doubles have their own unique, I guess, skill sets. So obviously, if you spend the more time you spend on one, the more you're going to get out of that specialty, right? So I think that's kind of I would say that's the reason why, there are very few players that play both. Having said that, generally the top singles players, if they do focus on doubles or if they really put in, some effort there.
Lost you. I don't know if that's my internet.
Oh yeah.
You just paused. Did you cut out for a sec?
I hear you. I hear you. I haven't, nothing cut out here on my end.
Okay, hold on. All right, so that was weird. Like you went dark and then paused, and now you're back. So we'll get that out. So okay, so singles, doubles. So yeah, so you have it is different, and it's obviously, like you said, most people focus on one or the other. And so I mean, in terms of like a hybrid ranking, would you say that's like And what's like the highest ever? Because you don't see like number one playing 4-25 is extremely high. So it seems like you have a very nice aptitude at both. Which do you prefer?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely rare, right, to have someone playing both singles and doubles. I haven't really played much doubles the last 4 or 5 years, to be honest. Actually, since around that time we won Wimbledon, maybe for a couple more years, I played doubles, and then really just focused on singles. Doubles for me, I mean, is always very natural. I played a lot of doubles when I was young. Even when I was playing singles, I was coming into the net. I still do today, but spending a lot of time at the net, which obviously that kind of skill translates well into doubles. So, so I think doubles there's a little bit less pressure in doubles. You're there with a partner. It's definitely much more relaxed but at the same time, the reward doesn't feel as great. So it's like anything, right? So when there's probably more pressure, there's a reason for that. And so yeah, I've been focused on singles. I still feel like I have some of my best years in front of me. Although the last 4 or 5 years have been tough. I haven't had a healthy year since 2017, I think it was. So I've been out for at least 3 to 4 months every year since then. So I feel like I'm still playing great tennis. Just need to stay healthy, and then we'll see how the next 3-4 years go. I think that's kind of. I feel like don't want to put a timeline on it, but I feel like that's probably where I'm at right now at this stage of my life. Is probably 3 or 4 more years on the court.
And now with Tom Brady, 44 years old, you see LeBron James, some of the greatest, and people are playing in sports, it seems, later. Could you give me a little bit of a tennis sort of what is your peak time, generally speaking, in tennis, and how late do players play? I mean, what's going on with these like 26 majors from Djokovic? These guys, it's just insane to see some people, Nadal and these guys, dominate for so long, but they're getting older. What is the prime of a tennis player generally?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you had asked me this 10 years ago, I would have given you a totally different number, right? But I guess I don't know. And someone listening to this that actually understands what I'm talking about right now will be like, oh, he's totally wrong. But I feel like from what I've heard is, okay, the age of 28 to 30 is the physical prime of a male, right? At least with their physicality. And again, someone's going to be telling me, oh, that's not what it is. But
right.
But I think now, as everything as just science and injury prevention and physiotherapy, medicine, all that, as that goes forward, I think that's obviously extending the careers of players and of all sports. I think they're kind of all moving up simultaneously. So now it feels like, mid 30s feels, or I would say early 30s kind of now feels like, ironically, that's where I'm at, 32. Feels like the prime, because I think it's kind of the perfect combination of experience, physical capacity, or peak performance, not too far off from there, but then and just having that experience and also years of, you're still getting better as a player, you're still improving. I think it's really the physicality is what goes down, not so much the technical or the tactical side or anything. So yeah, I feel like the prime is right now for me, honestly, until the age of 35, and you're seeing it with guys like Novak and, like you said, Tom Brady and even Federer. 5 years ago, I mean, now he's over 40, but 5 years ago he went on a tear, playing incredible. He was 35 years old, so definitely some changes in sports all around, and I guess that would just be the advancement of like I said, medicine, performance, everything going forward, and taking care of your body.
And tell me about a preparation for a tournament like this. It's major, it's super exciting. You come there. How much training is it where you're doing hard work? You're just kind of manicuring, resting? Like, give me kind of the days leading up, what a typical schedule is like at these major events.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit. It depends how early you get here. So obviously, kind of, I would say probably 4 or 5 days, right about where I am right now. You start to tone it down for sure. I've had some extremely tough training days the last couple of days. Yesterday, day before yesterday, I had like 5 hours on court, almost throwing up, to be honest, and just trying to push the limit. Have my fitness trainer here. Then I got another medium day today, which is Thursday, and then really Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just toning it down, playing 2 hours on the court, points, and then you just got to give your body time to just regenerate and try to peak for that first round. And obviously, the 3-4 weeks prior to this as well has been a lot of training. So it is a balance, just like anything in life, right? You gotta, you also can't push yourself too hard. Your body's gonna break down. So it's finding that right balance. And again, that comes with years of experience and having people around you that know what they're doing and kind of guide you as well and say, okay, this is the day you got to push. This is the day you got to take it easy. And then also feel your body, because everyone's different. And when you're tired, you got to, know when to take a break as well.
Makes a lot of sense. And who goes, what all goes into your team? You have a coach, you have a manager, agent. How much could you kind of give us an in-depth look at what it's like to be a professional tennis player at a high level, and who all is involved in your sort of day-to-day operations?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I would say the coach, physio, fitness trainer are kind of the key team members of I guess any top professional tennis player. Generally, it is very costly. It is a very costly sport. You're not necessarily making a lot of money unless you're at the top of the game. So not everybody has the luxury to be able to afford a full team around them, right? So you'll have some players that have just a coach, some that have a physio but it's part-time, some that only have a physio locally where they train and live and then use the physios on site. So it's a wide variety, amongst the ranks of the tennis tour, and just depends. Again, it's relative based on your income and but it's ironic because also one affects the other. So you also have to be willing to invest and take the chance and say, okay, I'm going to bring this extra person on board, and then hopefully that, right? So it's a little bit of but for me, I mean, there's also obviously sports psychology. There's data analytics. Is slowly coming into tennis, probably a little bit later than some other sports. And then, you can really grow the team out to 6-7 people, but I would say the 3 key are coach, fitness trainer, and physio.
Very nice. Sorry, my son banging on the door. He knows the big guest today. He's ready for action. Sorry about the banging there in the back. He's been trying to come in a few times. And tell me about how did you get into. People are fired up, man. Well, that's another question about fans. I want to ask about that in a little bit. That's with the noise and if you getting distracted. Actually, I'll ask you that right now. I want to know about playing in front of big crowds. Well, you can hear that, right? You hear the banging. He's going to bang on the door.
I can hear it. It's not bothering me, but if you're
okay, it's good. Hey, it's good energy in the background noise. I want to know about playing for Wimbledon titles. People are yelling, screaming, the pressure. How is it to play like when you're just playing in a first round of the tournament versus like a final of Wimbledon? Can you give me kind of a difference on what that feels like?
Yeah, I'm someone that thrives in front of a crowd with energy. I will generally play, I feel like quite a bit better if there's a lot of people watching. I know that's not necessarily the case for everybody, but that is the case for me. So I think, and that's why at the end of the day, that's that's the adrenaline rush that it makes, high level sport so addictive, I guess, or in a sense, like when you retire, I feel like it would probably be something that you really miss, that like adrenaline, the dopamine high of just like, holy smoke, like this is incredible. You just, winning a huge match and the crowd just going nuts. And, that's definitely something that I'm really going to miss after my career. And, I mean, at the same time, it's, it's a tough life. It's a tough sport. It's a lonely sport. You're traveling nonstop all year, away from family and friends. But so there's obviously pros and cons. I think when you're in something, you're always, you kind of like, oh, like be great to do something else or do that. But then you'll probably realize how much you miss it when you stop.
I was scrolling through, of course, the reason we know each other, Bill Perkins, who was epic wedding of all time. That was such a blast. Like I can't even call it a wedding. It was like a week vacation in Monaco, south of France, just having the best time. And we could talk about that for a whole podcast in itself. But I see here the picture in the Die with Zero book, which we know Bill wrote, and I'm sure you've read as I have. Yeah. How do you how could you maybe touch on that a bit, and how do you feel with being at the highest level and like set times and dates and schedules, how do you kind of juggle that with like with life and things and events coming on? Because you in some ways you're so free, right? Because there's like a lot of times that are down, or you have time to train and travel and whatever, but there's also kind of set schedules, and people have weddings and certain things where you just maybe can't miss, or how have you kind of managed that, juggled that, and can you maybe touch on a bit of the principles in that book and how you kind of live your life with what you're doing?
Yeah, you know what? That's been the hardest part, I think, throughout the course of my whole career. And as you get older, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, as you get more experience, I've learned to balance my life a little bit better while still kind of focused on the main goal. Because obviously you can't avoid the work to get to where you're trying to get to and accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And in my field, unfortunately, that means a ton of sacrifice from family and friends. But then again, if you think about living your life and having experiences and having people that you want around you and being able to do cool things that bring you these dividends of experiences, as Bill talks about in his book, like you have to make time for that in your schedule, which is what I've gotten a lot better at the last few years. It's like like knowing that, hey, there's a whole other side to life, and not being like tunnel visioned, and that created a lot of stress for me. I mean, as well, like in my early 20s especially, I was so hyper focused on tennis, which is not a bad thing, right? It's pros and cons, but I definitely felt like it was affecting me on a personal level, and just general happiness. It was just all work, constantly traveling around the world alone. Sounds great, but it wasn't great, right? You're just like hotel courts, next city, hotel courts, right? So I think I've definitely done a lot better with spending time with friends and family. That's kind of what brought more balance to my life the last few years. And actually, one of the things that I resonate, like for some reason hit me the most when I was reading Tao Zero was there's a part early on. I don't know what maybe it was third chapter. I can't recall exactly, but where Bill referred to a gift that he gave his grandmother or mother. I think his grandmother actually, and
I love this story. Yes.
And it was that he gave her cash, and then ultimately point of the story was that she didn't really use it. It was like, okay, great, but didn't really get anything out of it because she just kind of saved it, and it's in her nature to save.
I think he gave her 10,000. It's possible
10,000.
50, but 10,000. And then like she bought him a sweater or something like at Christmas. That was like her big spending on it. Was she just saved it and never used it, and that was like a real revelation for him about this different points and periods of life, and also about what people can do. So that stood out with me as well. That was a very vivid explanation.
And it was crazy because just really just reading that, I was like half a page just talking about that. It just like some reason just totally resonated with me and clicked to the point where I was like, I'm not going to buy my parents gifts anymore. Or like give them money. I was like, I'm going to fly them to everywhere where I go. I'm like, so right away at Christmas, I'm like, okay, Mom, Dad, like you guys are never like coming to Wimbledon. I was like, oh, I don't want to bother you. He's like, you're coming. I'm getting you. He's like, you're coming to Wimbledon. You're coming to these events because they're also getting older, and you want I haven't been able to spend too much time with my parents relative to how much I would like to, just given my travel schedule. And so I have Bill to thank for that, because I really feel like the next, several years, it'll just kind of shift how I look at, the value of a gift and versus the value of, spending time with somebody and the value of an experience, right?
Yeah.
The gift can be the experience, but in this case, that was one thing that was,
it's
really
huge. Well, he says like wealth, health, and time, and it's about memory dividends, right? You're trying to create experiences and during life, and it's a fascinating book. And yes, that's why we're here today. That's how we know each other, and for sure some fun times, and sure many more to come. And tell me about Necker Island, because I think is that maybe where you met Bill, but I know you've been there several times and do the tennis there. Can you kind of explain how special? Been there one time as well. Actually for Bill's 50th, and it's hard to even explain. It really is an unreal experience. Maybe tell me what you're there for. It's like a Necker Cup or once a year tennis event.
It's a once a year tennis event, charity event, pro-am, that Richard Branson hosts. It's just I went there the first time 2014 to go on vacation. It was amazing. Then I came back in 2019, and for some reason that time I was just like, this is the best week of the year. This is unbelievable. So I've been coming back every year since then, and it's really impacted my life actually going there, because I met some of my best friends. I met Bill there, who's become one of my closest friends. Met now also one of my closest friends is the organizer of that event, and so just it's really beautiful island, amazing people, so relaxed. Everyone's having a great time. It's also one of the 2 weeks that I have off throughout the year, so I let loose. You can you have fun. You can finally drink a bit, do whatever, and it's and I actually am fortunate enough now that Trevor Short and Richard 2 years ago asked me to be the tournament director. So it's really cool to be part of it. I'm not necessarily I'm not necessarily doing much, but I guess I'm in some ways kind of an ambassador for the event, which is super cool, and definitely highlight of the year.
Yeah, it's I think it's 2019. I was there in February for Bill's 50th, and I remember it was actually interesting. Do they have pickleball or padel also now, or no? Did they ever get that put in?
No, I don't know. They don't. No, okay. Not on the island. Not that I've seen.
Okay.
No.
Well, it's I was talking because one of the cool parts about it seems like Branson is there. Well, during this event for sure, but he's kind of usually on the island, or if he's there, he hangs out, he comes at breakfast, does whatever. And we were talking, then I'd emailed back and forth, and he was like pushing to get, I think, pickleball courts installed, and he was trying to figure out all this stuff, what to do. And I was just curious. I thought they did try to get that, but have you played pickle and paddle? I got to ask you, because I'm fascinated with this sport, and I know as a tennis pro, like I'm curious to. I feel like it's like not quite. I wonder, do you love it, not like it, indifferent, or just completely different thing? Have you dabbled at all?
No, I haven't dabbled it. I haven't dabbled yet. I've been wanting to. I've been wanting to try it just because I wanted to also. I have like a little bit of this theory, which maybe is slightly overconfident theory with regards to tennis players doing well in pickleball if they were to play pickleball.
Right.
But I haven't actually been able to play yet. I've literally never held a racket, but I want to try it. I played paddle, and that's super fun, or padel. I don't know it correctly, but that's with the glass, and that's very, very fun.
Yeah. But how would you describe because pickle is, in my opinion, it's much easier, lighter. You could play grandparents or your wife, girlfriend. Like it's sort of like you're just not as aggressive. Padel is something that is a little more fast, but kind of in the middle. Is that fair? Is it sort of like a hybrid in between tennis and pickle? Would you say? Because it gets moving and it's fun. It's very fun and good exercise, I think, too. But
I would say you nailed it. I think paddle is kind of the middle ground, and pickleball, I think also the reason why it's the fastest growing sport in America right now is because anybody can pick it up, and obviously, you still have a very large baby boomer population that they they can go and get exercise and play sport, and you don't have to master the technique like you do in tennis to be able to to be able to actually play and have a rally. And so it makes total sense. It'll be interesting to see if that projection growth is consistent the next 4 or 5 years or let's say decade or whatever. Let's see, but definitely makes sense why it's growing so quickly.
And the brothers, Brian, right? The Brian brothers. I got to meet and hang out with a bit. I played actually I was impressed with their soccer skill. To juggle. We were juggling. I guess that's how in tennis is that usually people decide if you're having fun who gets the first serve. But like I was shocked. Like I haven't played soccer. I played through college. Haven't played in a long time, and it was hard to juggle a tennis ball. But he was like pretty good. It was like really. I was impressed.
Do you know if it was Bob or Mike or both?
Yeah, Bob.
Recall?
Bob. Yeah.
Okay. I think a lot of tennis players, I would say most tennis players, were at least, at a high level of some other sport. When you're young, generally, if you're into sports, you're playing something else other than the one that you're focused on, right? So that makes sense, and they're obviously talented guys. But Mike, I don't know Bob that well. I know Bob. obviously, like just through the tour, but I just got to spend a bit of time with Mike on Necker Island last few years, but this last time specifically, and he's such a good guy. Like it's crazy, and this is also another crazy part about tennis is like you're around all these guys all the time, but it's just such a competitive environment that, and you're just so dialed in, and you're just so focused on what you have to do throughout the day. Like, you know, speaking of tunnel vision, that like you don't even get to like kind of slow down and smell the roses or like get to know somebody or like that well, like I would say, right? For example, like Bob and Mike Bryan. I mean, I've played against them 6-7 times, and you know, known them for years now in the locker room, and just really realized. And I was always like, yeah, they're cool guys, you know, whatever. And then just really 2 weeks ago, it was like, specifically Mike Bryan, because I was with him. Just amazing guy. I'm like, this is the coolest guy. We hit it off. We had a blast. Like, so fun. And it's funny that I've known him for 10 years and just had no idea that he was like that.
Yeah, they're really, really cool guys. Also, Bill had won like a charity, I think at Necker, I believe it was, and he did win some experience. And then he, you know, was in Miami, and he that's how I got to go and like play tennis with them with Bob for an hour, and then we were, you know, kicking the ball around. Really, really cool guy, and obviously they're super successful, right? Doubles like some of the most successful of all time. Speaking of soccer, I did read that you were a pretty good player, and it was a tough decision to sort of focus on one sport. Tell me about that and how that was as a kid, and when you made that decision just to segue into just one sport primarily.
Yeah, it's a funny story in a way. It wasn't even so much a tough decision in the sense of, you know, that was it ever in doubt that I was going to play tennis? No, the tough decision was that I was no longer going to play soccer, and I loved playing it. That was what made it tough. Mm-hmm. But so the story, I guess, is just that, you know, up until the age of 12, really, tennis and soccer were my two main sports. From the age of 5, right when I was walking, holding a racket, I was always, you know, tennis pro. It was basically my job from, I would consider it, you know, again, relative to being a kid, but I kind of viewed it like, okay, this is my work, like from a very young age. And soccer, I played just as much soccer as I did tennis, and that was fun. That was pure, like, okay, like go play soccer, have fun, you know, learn some other skills that'll apply to tennis with footwork and whatever. And then when I was 12 years old, I think I was 11 or 12. I have to talk to my dad, but I was playing rep soccer for my town, you know, Vernon, BC. And we were somewhere in the province, and playing a match. And at one point I got a breakaway, and I was running and the defenseman couldn't keep up, and so he like elbowed me in the face, and I got a black eye. And I think I'll never forget, we were driving home, and maybe this is just how my brain processed it. But we were driving home, and it was like the first time that soccer got in the way of tennis. And then my dad was just kind of like, okay, like, you know, we're no more soccer, you know, and I was just like, oh,
yeah, that's that's hard. I mean, because, you know, there's so many the greats and to play professionally, it's just very rare. There's guys that or females that play multi sports at the highest level. I mean, you hear about it in the U.S. like some there's a few, right, that have done football and baseball, or it's just so hard. So that's got to be tough. Also, the team aspect versus the individual. Can you maybe tell me a bit of what you prefer? What's kind of the benefits of individual and being, you know, your own? I'll let you tell me, but what is the differences between soccer and tennis in terms of what you liked and maybe what you prefer to do the other way, where it is individually versus as a team?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, you know, not having played a team sport at a high level, I obviously don't, you know, it's been very hard to compare, but I imagine, you know, that, you know, very, very different, right? I think team sports, it's probably a lot less pressure, unless you're like a superstar on a sport, you know, that it's just expected to just deliver day in and day out, just every night, whatever. Then, you know, I'm sure that has its own pressures that are, you know, large. But in tennis, it's you know, I think you know, the pressure is higher. You're very exposed. You know, if it's such fine margins. So even if you're like 1 or 2% off, like, you're gonna lose. If you're on a team of, you know, whatever, And if you're a little bit off that day, and you know, you're kind of blending in the team, and maybe you play less minutes because the coach is like, oh, you know what, he's a little off, so take him off, and it doesn't necessarily affect, you know. But in tennis, it's literally like, if you don't get like great sleep, if you like have 30 minutes less of sleep, or if you're a little stressed about something in your life and you're a little less focused or tired or whatever, like that will impact the result right away.
Right.
It's so cutthroat, and the margins are so small because of that, because everybody plays at such a high level. So it's really just, yeah. But at the end of the day, is also, I feel like, great reward, right? I mean, you're you know, maybe selfishly, you know, kind of reaping the benefits as the guy, right? As there's no doubt in terms of your, I mean, if you're playing at a certain, like, the results don't lie and the rankings don't lie, right? Because it's like, that's the great thing about tennis, is like, you step on, there's no politics. You step on the court, you're better, you win. End of story. You don't have to, you know, and so it's a very honest sport that way. But yeah, I mean, do I wish that I enjoy the team aspect? A lot. I really do, and I kind of thrive in it. I love team atmosphere. But I've been doing well in the individual sport too, so I'm all right.
Do you think we'll ever see in sports, in tennis, this type of, where that was like 26 majors apiece? I think Nadal, Djokovic, and is that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and Federer, like, I think at some point now, when it was Federer, there was emotional, you saw like people crying and how insane it was. But I mean, this is pretty insane, right? Like, even Sampras, obviously Pete Sampras, and obviously, like, I remember growing up and watching some of that, and they were always seemed like the top. But has there ever been anything like this? Like, what's the next comparable in terms of majors won? I mean, it's just insane. It seems like
it's insane. Yeah. So we got, I mean, Nadal has 22 right now.
22.
Djokovic has 21. Federer had 20. You know, the next best was Sampras at 14. You know, and that at the time, it was like, when Sampras had 14 majors, I mean, people were like, no one's ever going to break this. This is unbelievable. This will stand the test of time, you know. And then suddenly you have three guys during the same era that all got over 20. You know, pretty crazy. So I mean, and yeah, will somebody do it again? I think so. Absolutely, I think so, because well, there's a counter argument to this, but I mean, you have three guys that got to, first of all, just the fact that there's three that got over 20
right
in one era would indicate, okay, there's got to be some super athlete guy that comes up and gonna be, you know, at least one that's gonna be able to get more, or at least the same amount. The other thing is the fact that they played the same era and they were fighting over the same titles, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you were to, I mean, you could make an argument and say, okay, well, if it was just one of them, you'd have 50 Grand Slams, right? It doesn't necessarily work that way, because they're obviously pushing each other, and like, so their levels are going higher. And if you're just the standalone, like, you're not going to be the standalone guy for very long, because you can't push your limits the same way the guys are there. So it's like a balance. But long story short, I think, just given that you have three guys that are played the same era and they all have 20 Grand Slams, it would be, you know, not unreasonable to think that somebody will come up in the future and likely break whatever record.
I've never looked at the chart exactly, but I mean, so over the last, call it how many years, 15 years, 10 years, like, if you're talking about 60 majors won during this era, like, has there been even 4 or 5 unique people? Is it literally every major they've won? Like, is it like 2 or 3 people have won a major in a year throughout this period? And how long is it? I mean, it just seems wild. Like, it just seems like, who else could win? Like, there's only 4 a year.
Yeah. It's crazy, because I mean, I think for the last decade, like, I don't know the stats, but I can give you like a ballpark high level, you know, stats report here, and that's that, like, the last decade, I think there's just been a handful of guys outside of Roger, Rafa, and Novak that have won a slam, to the point where most people will be able to name who they are in the last like 10 years. Like, that's how few have done it, right? So that's crazy. So it's yeah, they've taken dominating a sport to the next level. So will we ever see anything like that again? That's a lot less likely than you know, will we see one guy break the record? I think, you know, that's probable. I think it's likely. But will we have 3 guys that have just dominated and taken all the titles, or even 2 guys that have just taken everything for grabs the last decade? That's tough. Like
For
I
sure.
don't know. Like that, I'd probably put my money on never seeing that again.
On being unlikely for, yeah, absolutely. And tell me, I'm always fascinated because again, this is it's poker predominant podcast. We have, musicians, actors, different athletes from sports. I'm always fascinated at the top level to be a professional within your specific spot here. Like what attributes do you feel looking at, your peers, yourself, make a great tennis player? It's like, what is it? The work ethic, the how much, given ability, what type of things maybe that someone might not think of though, that makes someone be able to be one of the best in the world to do it for a living?
Yeah. Well, this is so funny. Just this question alone, I feel like could be a 1-hour podcast. But there's so many things that are flying through my head when you ask that, in terms of, because I've had conversations over the years with people about, even comparing other sports, and again, not having necessarily that much context from the other sport, but at least internally in tennis. And there's so many different variables and so many different, obviously you don't have to be good you don't have to tick off all the boxes, obviously, right. But like there's, obviously, so okay, work ethic goes without saying. I mean, you have to be tough. You have to have tough skin. You have to be, you have to be tough mentally. You have to be strong, because you're basically in an arena. It's a one-on-one combat in a way, not physical necessarily. Like you're not beating somebody up, but you need to be able to handle a lot of stress. I mean, you're traveling all year. It is a very stressful situation to be in. I mean, you're going like on a court to go one-on-one against somebody, and you're going week after week after week. You have to push the body, so you have to be able to go through, physical pain and handle that well. That's, similar to other sports for sure, or anything really, right? Like the 10,000 hours. I mean, that you can't escape that. I mean, anything, any aspect of life, if you want to be successful, if you gotta put in the hours and like work your ass off, right? I mean, it's kind of like, sometimes you'll have some people that will become rich, but I wouldn't consider that success if they got there, like people can get rich without being successful, in my view, at least with how I view success, right? I mean, if you get super lucky, or let's say you win the lottery, or let's say you put something on a stock, or let's say you inherit something or whatever, right? So obviously, but in terms of reaching a certain level of success, I don't think the hard work is not something you can avoid.
Like analytics, how important, you see this now, Moneyball and baseball, and the Brentford, the guy, the using statistics and different models and stuff. How important in sports, like the major sports as well. Is this something in tennis that you use in your game strategy and film? Could you maybe talk about that, like in terms of watching film, study, and what tools the top level professionals are using to analyze your own play and others?
Yeah, so this is another really interesting one, and it kind of ties into the last question, because just given how many different variables there are in tennis, how many different things you have to be good at and focus on, and how much energy and time that you have a day to be able to do everything. So I think, so whether that's, working on your technique, your physical aspect, your mental aspect, recovering, also being able to take time away and adjust, and then, spending time on data analytics, it's tough to fill. It's really tough. And I think that's where tennis is a little bit behind the other sports. And I don't know if it ever can be the same if the structure stays the way it is, because, there's only so much time in a day, and spending time on one aspect will take away from another, right? Just because there's, like I said, there's only, unfortunately, 24 hours in one day. And right. I think, but it is becoming more common in tennis. And I know that especially the top guys are going more in depth into the data, and they have their own teams, obviously, that are looking into it. I'm now working, as of this year, as of I guess middle last year, working with a data team as well. So they kind of they connect closely with my coach. They go through, every time I have an opponent, they'll go through, okay, these are some of his tendencies. And it's tough. It's a fine line, because you also can't as a tennis player, you can't have like overload of information, because you got to kind of dial in on 2 or 3 key things in that match. So it's best that it's through the coach, that the coach gets the data, kind of looks through it and then picks the 2-3 things that he thinks are most important to tell the player, because the player at the end of the day has to be on the court and adapting constantly. You're problem solving throughout, from the beginning to the end of that match, because you're playing against a person, that is going to be shifting his own tendencies. If he sees suddenly that you're covering something, or if he's like, you know what, this guy knows that I'm doing this, or you pick up on patterns. So you also have to be smart with when you use that information at what times, and so it's, but it is coming into tennis, but definitely behind other sports.
Yeah, and speaking of similar sort of topic, but the mental side, do you specifically, meditation, for example, kind of just like something basic, something that is probably good to do and people do in general, but for you on the mental side of tennis, because I know in swimming as well, I lived with Phelps for 8 years, and obviously most decorated Olympian ever, but he's very vocal about mental health and talk space and doing that. And I feel like the individual sports, it's a little like when you're in a basketball team or a soccer team, there's guys around and you're kind of sharing the burden. But the mental side, I feel like, especially a lot of training individually, hitting balls, it just seems like it can be a bit tough to really, the social side of it, and to stay positive. And how do you deal with that, the mental side of tennis, and also preparation with being an individual sport?
Yeah, definitely is very tough. I think, working with a sports psychologist is kind of a commonplace, for tennis players. I think some more so than others, obviously. I think, a big part of it as well, as I, alluded to earlier, earlier on, is finding the balance in your life. I think when you overload yourself with stress, or overload yourself with work and flying, just because it is such a high stress, high pressure job, I feel like I've been much happier and much, just more of a balanced individual ever since I started to, really carve time away throughout my year to have fun with my friends and my family and do fun. And I think that's really helped, honestly, because you also created another little bit of my identity, has shifted a little bit the last 4 years, I would say, since my back surgery. Prior to that, I was Vasek, the tennis player, and every match was like life or death. And if I won, everything was amazing. If I lost, everything was shit.
Yeah.
So like,
dealing with winning and losing is huge. I mean, it's not easy, especially with that. I mean, that's what happens, right? It's not ties. You go home and you either win or lose, and whether you're at Wimbledon in a final or in the first round, it's intense, right? Everything, it's war. It feels like, I'm sure it's got to be hard, because you travel across the world, you're in Australia, you're in these places, and then if it's over early, I'm sure that's very difficult. Just like the highs are big and the lows are big. I mean, that's a major deal.
Exactly. And especially, I would say why it was more so the case for me 4 years ago and prior to that is because I kind of tied my whole like self identity and self-worth to my profession. So it's natural that you're going to go through, major peaks and valleys, even psychologically, because your results are not going to be consistent. I mean, you're going to have bad periods, you have good periods. And unfortunately, and I know many players go through this, is that because that's kind of like the reason you exist, in your mind, is like to play tennis. It can really take a toll. And I think so why I alluded to my back surgery is because when I had surgery in 2019, I was off the tour for 8 months, and I got involved in so many other things. I mean, my business, I was just so interested, and I really just, if suddenly I had friends, I had a social life. I started in tennis, this organization now that Novak and I are doing together. I started a mushroom company. I just did some investments, and suddenly I came back and I was healthy, and I was so much more relaxed on the court. I was, if I had a tough loss, I didn't go down here, but I just went like, okay, it was just so much more balanced, because I was like, oh, I'm also Vasek, the guy that's, can do this and this and have a social life. And it was just totally different.
It's so interesting you say that, because this is the most valuable lesson my dad ever taught me. It's not about what happens, how you react to what happens. And it's just like, also similar. I had an event in poker where in 2011, Black Friday, I was playing online poker from my couch in the US, kind of doing it for a living. I was in college. Next thing you know, the DOJ, shut down all the sites. Poker's like off in the US, can't play from the USA. I'm living in Baltimore at the time.
Jeez.
And I'm like, man, the life's over. Like, this is crazy. But meanwhile, I was eating Ding Hao, Chinese food every day, playing beer pong all night, wake up, roll out of bed, play. I played college sports. I was an athlete my whole life, education, school, and then nothing, and just kind of doing nothing. And in my head, I was like, oh, this is fun or whatever. And then that kind of like, after maybe a couple of years of that, it was like, all right, now I'm traveling. Like, I was just at home in this area. Now I was like going to tournaments around the world. I'm playing live poker. I'm meeting people, business stuff's going on. I'm kind of whatever. So it's like in the moment, it's like, wow, life is over. How can this be? This is so terrible. But then, that's like a 10,000 foot view. Like, man, I think that was like, had to happen. So I think that's like, I think in anyone's life, like you'll have these moments where it does feel like everything is just over and it's the worst, but it just looking back like, wow, that's amazing. And that's hard to, it's hard to appreciate. I think the faster you can kind of recognize that, okay, this happened and let me figure it out. Like, that's very huge. And obviously people have different abilities and bandwidths on how fast they're able to process and shift into a positive from a negative. So that sounds like, that was sort of a aha moment and a big deal for you.
100%. I think that's, there was another kind of event apart from my surgery, a couple of years prior to that also just gave me a complete paradigm shift mentally where, since then, especially, I mean, to your point, any time I've kind of faced adversity or perceived adversity, right? It's all what you're, I every negative situation, if you can look at it in a positive way, because I've had several perceived negative events in my life that have just created another path or something, or that I've learned so much from, that I've developed and that I became a better person, let's say, or so at this point, it's like anything that happens, I just have that mentality like, okay, this is good. This is going to be good for something. Obviously, apart from, tragedies, which is another thing, but it's, you can really just, everything is good. Even bad things is good. And I tell some of my friends sometimes they have something that really, like, oh, they get all stressed out about something that happened, whether they get fired. This recently, someday, I forget what it was. And I was like, hey, like, you have no idea what this is going to be good for. Like, you think this is bad right now. Like, watch, like 1 year, it'll take a totally different route. And you'll be like, oh, thank God that happened, right? Or something. So if you can kind of approach life from that perspective, I think it really just makes the journey a lot more enjoyable.
For sure. And being Canadian, first World Cup, I believe, for the men's, right? Or at least scored the first goal. Was it the first World Cup ever? No, not the first World Cup ever.
No.
First goal ever. There's some like our first point. There was something that was big for Canada. What happened there, and how fun was that World Cup to watch?
Yeah, it was. I think it was the third time. I don't want to get my stats wrong here as a Canadian, but from what I read, from what I understood, this is the third time Canada's ever played the World Cup. First time qualified in I don't know how many years. A lot of many years. Maybe I'm not going to even say it. But it was the first. But it was the first goal that Canada had ever scored.
Okay, that's what it was, right? Yeah, it was their star too, right?
And that was the day. That was the day that we won. Davis Cup, actually, the same day. Team Canada, we won Davis Cup, which is basically the World Cup of tennis, comparable. Canada's never won it. Never, it was the first time that Canada's ever won Davis Cup, and we won it the same day as Team Canada scored the first goal. So that was interesting that happened basically.
That's very, very cool. That's a lot of emotion. Very, very cool. Obviously, the next World Cup hosted by U.S., Mexico, and Canada. So there'll be, I think, two cities, maybe Toronto and Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken, but then all across the board. So that'll be fun. We'll have to go to some games, as you love the sport. So do I. And Miami, I know, is a host location, and that's going to be sick. And I think 48 teams actually. So pretty good shot for Canada to be. Or actually, they're a host nation, right? Each of those countries will be in no matter what. Yes. But that's going to be very, very cool. And tell me about your training, your physical training routine. Like, how has it shifted from, say, 21 to 32? How have you adjusted and adapted to your routine?
I think, I mean, I always kind of push my body to the limit when I'm doing, fitness. It's just kind of how I am by nature. If I'm doing something, I go 100%. So I think I've had to learn how to like be a little bit better at listening to my body, I guess, you know, because I've had some injuries over the years, probably as a result of just that mentality that I've had. And that mentality has also probably done me a lot of, you know, great favors as well. But so I think now it's a little bit more, I'm more in tune with, like I said, with my body and listening to, you know, kind of if I have some aches or pains or whereas when I was younger, I would ignore all that. And now, as I get more experienced, I'm, you know, just more careful with not going into the red zone. But having said that, still knowing that to improve, you need to be out of your comfort zone. So I'm still obviously, you know, push quite a bit. And then, in terms of when I'm training throughout the year or before tournaments, that hasn't really changed. It's there's like pretty like standard, kind of protocols that the fitness trainers follow that I work with, and there's certain times of the year where you have your training block, and then when you're in tournaments, you're kind of maintaining, you know, some days you'll push a little bit more, but generally it's pretty structured.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
And you're talk about the coaching. Your father, I believe, coached you for a long time. How important is it coaching in tennis, and what was the point where you went from, you know, being with your father, who was sort of guiding you there, to the next level of a professional coach, or was your dad a professional, or did he have experience before coaching?
Yeah, no, so not really. He played recreationally back in, well, former Czechoslovakia, obviously, and when he came to Canada, my parents escaped the communist regime there and came to Canada. My dad just became a tennis, you know, nut and just like totally obsessed, and wanted his sons to play professionally, and started coaching my older brothers and then me when I was obviously old enough, and just read, you know, magazines, like coaching magazines, was studying the sport on TV, just really just dove in head first. And then, yeah, so it was more, so then he coached me basically until I was 20 years old, minus a 2-year period there where I worked with another coach. And the main reason, I guess, for that was obviously very lucky, because no one's going to give you as much attention and energy as a parent, right? So I think that was what really was pushed me, is that his passion just kind of rubbed off on me. And so I spent hours and hours on court and running side to side, and you know, so I think which is why I believe, which is why it's a very common story in tennis at the top level, that many or most, you know, were kind of initially pushed by a parent.
Yeah, the King Richard movie I saw, that was I liked the movie. I thought it was a really cool story that got told there, and you know, obviously Will Smith won the Academy Award, and also put on quite a show at that award ceremony. But that was that movie was cool. That was cool to see that sort of storyline, and it just, you know, I'm sure a little bit whatever, but it was, you know, exaggerated or made up. But it just, to literally do that and have the dad sort of just, you know, will these girls to champions is just, I mean, it's kind of, yeah, it's insane and motivational and very, very cool story. So that that was fun. Yeah, I guess that's probably one of the best doubles ever, right? Single doubles, like they win singles and they crush those. That's just like in a different world of domination, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, the Williams sisters are just, I mean, you know, just next level athletes and tennis players. So singles, doubles didn't matter for them, right? And obviously Serena being the greatest of all time.
Yeah, now I want to ask about Czechoslovakia. So your parents are from there. They escaped the regime to Austria and then moved to Canada. How many languages do you speak? I feel like the over under is 5. Like this part of the world, and you know, you see like what are your languages that you do speak?
Yeah, I only speak 3. I speak Czech, English, and French. Czech and fluently, obviously. I do want to learn how to speak Spanish, because I feel like I would pick that up pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And it was not overly different, you know, from French, and maybe, you know, maybe Italian. I don't know, but I definitely want to learn one more language. But 3 is where I'm at right now.
And is that what you speak? So you speak that fluently? Czech, like when you're at home, you'll speak with your parents?
Yeah, so I speak Czech fluently. It's like PG Czech, because it's like or why I say PG Czech is because I speak Czech at home with my parents, and for, you know, basically my whole life. But then when I speak Czech with you know, in a social setting with other players or whatever, like I'm totally fine just having a conversation, but I won't pick up on slang or or like any kind of jokes or like that are a little bit, because I'm it's just like, oh, like it's like household language, right? It's like this is how you speak with your parents, and I haven't really had so many social, I haven't been exposed to too many social settings growing up, or even recently, where I would kind of, my vocabulary would go into like more kind of slang or part of but and then French I speak fluently because I went to French school when I was young, and then for 4 years I worked with a French coach, and we spoke French probably like half the time. So I've actually gotten a lot better. My French has gotten a lot better over the years, even since I went to French school. But so fluent in all three. Yeah.
Very, very cool. I actually was just digging through here. I saw the so we got to that was the tennis, like juggling, and honestly, like juggling with the tennis ball. I just dug up, like I was like shocked because it is hard. Like he's got headers.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, man, like I've never seen a tennis player. He's making good.
Oh yeah, and you're good too. You used to play?
Yeah, I played through college, but like that he was telling me, he was just like, he's like, that's how that's how you start for. I mean, this is like, honestly, it's impressive because it was like he was like, this is how we decide who gets to serve first a lot, like playing soccer. He's got knees, and yeah, so it was fun. but yeah, no, I honestly love playing padel. That's like got courts around here. That's the I know pickleball is the fastest growing sport, but there is, padel seems to be very popular in Europe. Is that kind of my last question, is what you will maybe do after tennis? And would that be something that there's now the tour, I think, for pickleball, and they're doing this new type of, it seems like a lot of business ventures within tennis. And is that something you think you'll stay in the sport, whether after you retire from playing, or do you have more sort of goals outside of tennis and business wise?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I'll stay in the sport. Obviously, at this time, I mean, I don't know the future, but at this moment in time, I think I'll most likely, just move on in my life to something. I have so many other things I want to do in business, and I have, obviously, with the mushroom company, I have, an advisory board of four different companies at the moment, and I want to, I have a project that I want to start when I retire, at least at this moment, what I think I will do, and it's very opposite from what tennis is right now, and maybe I will be involved with Tennis Canada, to some degree, whether it's Davis Cup captain, whether it's whatever, I'm not sure, but I definitely feel like I'm excited for the next chapter and phase of my life, where tennis is a much smaller part of it. At the same time, I feel like I'll always be, I'll always have a connection to the sport just because it's given me so much and given me the life that I have. And I have a lot of experience that I can, I like helping people. So I feel like I'll always help, even if it's some players, juniors locally, just to share the experience, just because I know how difficult it was for me and how difficult it is for any young tennis player coming into trying to make it professionally. So I wouldn't want that experience that I've kind of accumulated over the years to just go to waste, and especially because it is a sport that I love. So I will be involved, but probably to a much smaller degree.
Very cool. Well, we're going to wish you a lot of luck at the Australian Open. Very exciting. And the last question about luck is, I want to ask you about draws and such, because you said it's kind of random draws. You play the best player or the worst. Is that how the draws are literally done? It's like there's seeding and then draws, or it's just like a pure open draw?
Yeah, so there's seeding. So they take a certain amount of the top ranked guys. Depends on the size of the draw. So the Grand Slam, it's the biggest draw of the year. So they'll take the top 32 ranked in the world. They'll seed them, put them in sections, separate them, and then the rest is random draw. So
very cool.
It's and yeah, you can get unlucky, lucky, whatever, but at the end of the day, it kind of balances out, right? Like anything, like if you go on a roulette table and you bet on red, and it's like, and you only play one time, it's like, okay, you got 50% of all these, zero makes it less. Let's say 50% chance you're gonna be lucky or not. Right. But then if you play roulette, 1,000 times, if you go 1,000 times, it'll even out.
That's part of part of the deal for sure. Well, that
Yeah.
it's you know, hanging around Bill and some of us too, Antonio, you know a bit about, a lot of talk
Oh
about
yeah.
odds and math, and I'm sure there's
Yeah.
been some fun wagers and such that come up for a good time. But yeah, man, listen, Vasek,
Yeah.
very cool to chat with you, man. I appreciate it. Definitely learned a lot. And where can people follow you across the board? Where are you most active on socials?
Yeah, I'm yeah, I guess my Instagram, it's Vasek.Pospisil. I guess Instagram is probably the page. And I have a Facebook page as well. Twitter, my Twitter handle is just Vasek Pospisil. So I need to be a little bit more active there. And but yeah, I really enjoyed it, Jeff. This was awesome. Honestly, it was great to be here. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. Thanks for making it work over on Australia. We will be sweating the results and keeping an eye on you. I do appreciate this. And this will be on all the audio outlets. So, guys, thanks again. Vasek Pospisil, who is a top-ranked tennis player in the world, has won Wimbledon doubles and is he's not done. He's young. He's still young. He's coming into prime. Tennis players are going forever, just like every other sport in their 40s, 32. We'll keep an eye on you across the board and wish you much success. I'm sure we'll run into each other very soon. Thanks again for the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.